in a world where dreams still whisper and magic never fades. Welcome to Magic Fairy Tales TV, the enchanted realm where timeless stories come alive once more. From classic adventures to new bedtime wonders, each tale is crafted to awaken the child within and rekindle your happily ever after. So open your heart, close your eyes, and step inside the magic kingdom of fairy tales. Subscribe now for magical tales every week and rediscover the wonder you've always believed in. Before the wind began to whisper her name, before the dust remembered her footsteps, there was a house that waited. It stood beyond the vale, silent, veiled in ivy and grief. They said no light had touched its windows for 50 years, yet one painting inside still seemed to breathe. Tonight, we step through the mist with Elara Finch, the last of her line, as she unlocks the door to a forgotten legacy. This is the beginning of the Whispering Portrait. A Gothic fairy tale of memory. The road to Winthorn Hall wound through a valley shrouded in mist and half-forgotten legends. Even at midday, the sun hesitated to linger there, as though wary of stirring the silence that lay like a sleeping cat upon the hills. Villagers avoided the path when they could, though none could quite say why. Only whispers lingered, of strange lights flickering behind shuttered windows, and a single portrait that sometimes breathed. When Elara Finch arrived at the crossroads that evening, she thought of none of that. Her boots were caked in mud, her satchel heavy with travel-worn paints and brushes, and her mind was fixed only on her new commission, to restore the family portrait of Winthorn Hall. She had painted noble faces before, but never one so steeped in rumour. The hall rose before her as twilight deepened, its silhouette vast and lonely against the horizon. Vines crept up its sides like fingers of time itself. The air smelled faintly of rain and old books, and in the high windows, faint candlelight trembled like something trapped between worlds. A tall man awaited her at the gates, the steward, Mr. Penrith. His posture was polite, though his eyes carried the weariness of one who had lived too long beside old ghosts. "You must be Miss Finch," he said, his voice low and dry. "The master's study is ready for your work. The portrait awaits." He led her through echoing halls, where dust motes drifted like sleeping stars. Tapestries hung heavy and faded, their colours long since devoured by time. In the great foyer stood the portrait itself, taller than Elara, its frame carved with curling ivy and cherubs whose faces had worn to eerie blankness. A woman gazed out from the canvas, her expression serene yet knowing, her eyes too alive for paint. She was the Lady Winthorn, Penrith murmured, as though afraid the portrait might overhear. "Painted 200 years ago. They say she sees more than she shows." Elara smiled faintly. "I've heard such things about many portraits, Mr. Penrith, most of them untrue." "Perhaps," he said, and though his lips formed a polite smile, it never touched his eyes. Yet here, one learns to be careful with disbelief. That night, as she unpacked her brushes beneath the steady flicker of candlelight, Elara felt the house settling around her, like a breath held too long. Outside, rain tapped gently at the glass. She leaned close to the portrait, her brush hovering over the faded oils. "You and I," she whispered to the painted lady, "will find your colours again." And somewhere deep within the silence of the hall, something seemed to sigh. The rain fell harder through the night, a silver curtain against the tall windows of Winthorn Hall. Wind sighed down the chimneys, and the ancient timbers of the manor groaned softly in reply. In her guest room, Elara lay awake, watching the candle's last flame flicker into shadow. Every creak of the floorboards, every distant knock. By morning, the storm had passed, leaving the world washed and still. Mist hung low over the garden, and the scent of wet ivy drifted through the halls. Elara made her way to the grand parlour where the portrait awaited her, a sentinel of another time. Dust coated the floor, disturbed only by her footprints and the faint drag of her satchel. When she uncovered the painting fully for the first time, the light from the tall windows spilled across the lady's face, pale, ageless, calm. Her eyes, painted in shades of blue and grey, seemed almost to follow the movement of the light. Beneath the grime of centuries, Elara could sense something delicate, something alive beneath the surface, as though emotion still breathed under the varnish. She dipped her brush into linseed oil and began her work. Hours passed unnoticed. The quiet rhythm of her brush filled the air, punctuated by the occasional chirp of a distant bird outside. As she cleaned away the layers of dust and age, the woman's face began to return. Soft cheeks, a faint smile, the shadow of melancholy at the corner of her mouth. Elara. The voice was soft, barely a whisper, yet unmistakable. Elara froze. The brush slipped from her fingers, striking the wood floor with a soft tap. She turned slowly, heart thudding in her chest. No one stood behind her. Only the echo of her name faded into silence. She took a deep breath and exhaled, forcing a laugh. You've been too long alone, Finch. Houses like this play tricks on the ears. She turned back to the canvas. The woman's painted eyes seemed wider now, glossier, as if wet. The faintest suggestion of breath hung near her lips, no more than the ghost of mist. Elara stepped closer, peering into the painted depths. Clever, she murmured. Whoever painted you, they knew how to hold a soul inside people. She reached for her brush again. That night, she dreamed of corridors that twisted like ribbons, doorways that opened into endless mirrors. The lady from the portrait walked beside her, her gown whispering over marble floors, her hand cool and steady. When Elara looked at her, she saw not the calm smile of the painting, but sorrow, vast and old as the house itself. Help me, the lady said. He never let me leave. Elara woke before dawn, her hands cold, her pulse thrumming in her throat. Her lamp still glowed faintly. The portrait loomed in the half-dark, veiled in shadows. And in the silence, she thought, no, she heard, the faintest rustle of cloth within the frame, as if someone had shifted inside. Morning came, draped in gold and hush. Dew glittered on the grass beyond the manor's ivy-curtained windows, and a soft wind threaded through the cracked panes. Elara stood once again before the portrait, its colours now cleaner, brighter, yet the expression more mysterious than ever. The lady's eyes no longer seemed still. They shimmered faintly in the light, like rippling water touched by dawn. Elara leaned closer, searching for the trick of reflection. But the light was steady. The shimmer came from the wall. Something stirred deep in her memory. The professor's old warning. In old estates, the art is not always painted on the walls. Sometimes it's painted into them. She smiled faintly at the thought, but unease settled beneath the humour. She lifted her lamp closer to the frame, angling it just so, and then she saw it. Beneath the lady's neckline, where the shadows met the lace, faint lines of script had been painted and buried beneath centuries of varnish. Letters, words. She held her breath and brushed gently with solvent, until a single phrase revealed itself in curling, faded ink. Light reveals what darkness bound. Elara frowned. A hidden verse? She moved the lamp again. The golden glow played across the lady's throat, and suddenly the paint seemed to tremble. For a heartbeat, the blue of her gown deepened into indigo, and the eyes, those solemn, trapped eyes, looked directly into Elara's. Her breath caught. Then, in stillness, a faint hum, like a single note struck from an unseen harp, filled the air. Elara. This time, she didn't flinch. You can speak. The hum grew softer, resolving into words. The light remembers. The darkness forgets. You are the first to listen. The candle flame quivered violently, though no wind moved. A single petal from the vase nearby drifted to the floor, weightless and soundless. Elara whispered, "Who are you?" The one who loved, the one who trapped. The painted woman's hand, still frozen in brushstrokes, now seemed to shimmer, a suggestion of movement hidden between layers of pigment. A faint outline, as if she were pressing her palm from within the frame. Elara stepped back, trapped. By who? The voice faltered, breaking into a whisper. The painter. My husband. He feared that beauty fades, so he kept mine where time could not touch it. But I have been cold for 100 years. The last word trembled through the hall like the echo of a bell. Elara's heart pounded. You're saying, he bound your soul to this painting. A pause. Then a sigh, almost grateful. Yes, but he also left a key. What key? The morning light through the east window. It will show you the door he painted over. And just like that, the voice faded, swallowed by silence. Elara stood alone before the portrait, shaking, the edges of the world pulsing softly around her. She turned toward the eastern wall, where sunlight had begun to spill through the tall windows. It reached across the floorboards like a searching hand, touching the wallpaper just beside the fireplace. There, she saw something she had never noticed before. The faint shape of the door frame, smooth, painted over long ago. The pulse quickened. Light reveals what darkness bound, she murmured again. She pressed her fingers to the wall. Beneath the paint, she could feel the subtle outline of carved wood and the cold metal of a handle that had been sealed away for generations. The faint scent of varnish still lingered in the air when Elara set down her brush and reached for the candle. Morning light slanted low and gold across the parlor, and within its path, the hidden door's outline glowed more distinctly. Seams of faint shadow where none should exist. The whisper had gone, leaving the silence heavy and weighty, like a held breath in an empty cathedral. Elara pressed her palm flat against the painted wall again. It was smooth and cold beneath the skin, but the wood beneath the paint yielded faintly, as if softened by time. This can't be real, she murmured. Yet her voice felt too small against the vast quiet. She fetched a small chisel and palette knife from her satchel, tools of her craft, and began to scrape carefully at the surface. Each stroke peeled away years of paint, flaking into dust that drifted like faded snow. Beneath the topmost layer was another, older blue, dark green with a faint sheen. Then, there, the tip of the knife caught the edge of the handle. Alara's breath hitched. She scraped away the rest, revealing a slender brass lever dulled to the edge. She hesitated only a moment before grasping it. The latch gave a soft click. The wall shuddered, the seam widened. A breath of cold air poured out. Not the damp scent of a cellar, but something dry and ancient, like the air of a sealed channel. The hidden door creaked open. A narrow staircase descended into darkness. Elara lifted her candle, watching the flame bow and twist as the air breathed out from below. She swallowed. Light reveals what darkness bound, she whispered again and began to descend. Each step silent and faint. Cobweb brushed her sleeves, dust motes drifted. The deeper she went, the quieter the world grew, until even her heart beat sounded as if absorbed by the walls themselves. At the bottom lay a small chamber, circular, lined with shelves filled not with books, but with jars of paint. Red ochre, lead white, crushed sapphire, and powdered gold. In the center stood a white, another canvas. Elara said, the candlelight trembled. Unfinished, unmistakable. A curve of joy, a streak of light, a small image, all rendered in a few deft strokes that shimmered faintly, wet though no paintbrush had touched in the centuries. Her breath came fast. How? The air stirred. Behind her something moved. A shadow detached itself from the wall. Tall, spare, draped in the outline of a painter's hand. His eyes, when he turned toward her, were colourless and hollow as frost. You should not have come, he said softly. Elara froze. The candle gutted and thrown broken shadows across his face. You're him, she whispered. The painter, her husband. The ghost behind his head, sorrow etched deep across his whole expression. I only meant to preserve her, to hold her beauty as it was, unspoiled. The ghost's fingers clenched around an invisible brush, and still she calls for me. His tone darkened. But you've woken what was meant to rest. Do you not understand the cost of bringing her back? Elara lifted the candle higher, then free her, let her go. The figure's eyes narrowed, flickering like smoke. And what will you give in return, child of light? A tremor shivered through the chamber walls. The jars rattled, pigment spilling like bleeding stars across the floor. Elara steadied her breath, whatever it takes. The ghost hesitated, and for an instant his expression softened, almost human, then let the light decide. He reached out, brushing a phantom hand through the air. The candle's flame leapt, flared, and the unfinished portrait of Elara ignited in golden light. Paint bled across the canvas, filling her likeness until the image was complete. Her own reflection blinked back at her, eyes wide with dawning terror. The ghost's voice echoed. The painter's gift demands a price. The flame erupted, engulfing the canvas in light. Elara staggered back, and in that same heartbeat she heard the voice from the upstairs portrait, clearer than ever, whisper through the smoke. Elara, step into the light. The storm had gathered for hours above the manor, but it did not break until midnight. It came first as a whisper against the shutters, a trembling of ivy leaves pressed to the stone walls. Then, as if summoned by the name of some restless ghost, the sky opened, sheets of rain descending in silver, washing the grounds clean of their long silence. Elara stood in the upper gallery, staring at the portrait that had undone her world. It hung slightly crooked now, a hairline cracked marring the surface from top to bottom. As though the very canvas had aged with sympathy with the truth it had kept buried. The woman within it, Lady Isolde Renfield, no longer seemed merely painted. Her eyes glimmered wetly, almost alive. Her lips parted just enough to suggest a word waiting to escape. Elara had uncovered the final lock behind the wall. The hidden chamber was real, and the remains she had found there, wrapped in the shredded remnants of a once elegant gown, had not belonged to a stranger. They belonged to the woman who painted. Downstairs, the hearth hissed and spat, its flames dim as if ashamed to burn. Rowan lingered by it, his usually calm hands trembling slightly around a decanter of brandy. She was buried alive, he murmured, the words so faint that they almost vanished beneath the sound of rain. The walls were sealed around her, and no one spoke again. Elara turned from the window, her eyes hollow. She didn't die by accident. Someone wanted her erased. Rowan nodded slowly. Lord Renfield, her husband, or his servants, acting on command. The old letters hinted at madness. She saw things, spoke to shadows. She tried to free herself from something binding her, but they silenced her instead. Elara's voice trembled, low, fierce, and now she speaks through the portrait. As if hearing its name, the portrait gave a faint creak, the canvas tightening, frame groaning softly. A draught rippled through the gallery, fluttering loose papers and making the chandelier sway in warning. It was then that Elara felt it, the pull again. The same gravity that had first drawn her to the portrait when she arrived at Renfield Hall. It wasn't just curiosity or fear, it was recognition. Something of her own loneliness, her own need to be remembered, echoed within the painted eyes. Elara, Rowan said gently, stepping forward. We should leave this place until daylight. But Elara was no longer listening. She moved closer to the portrait, her reflection walking on the varnished surface. She was never buried, she whispered. Not truly. She was trapped here. Her fingers brushed the edge of the frame. The touch was enough. The entire room shuddered. The candles gutted out, all but one, and in that wavering flame, Lady Isolde's expression changed. Her painted eyes rolled toward Elara. Her lips moved. The whisper came like silk tearing. Finish what they began. Elara staggered back. Rowan lunged forward, grabbing her shoulders. What did she say? Alara's breath came fast. She wants to be free. The wall isn't enough. She's still bound to the painting. How? The rest was lost as the wind tore open the far window, sending a wave of rain across the gallery floor. Lightning illuminated the portrait again, and for the briefest instant, Lady Isolde's reflection was gone, replaced by Elara's own face, painted and perfect, her eyes hollow and shining with some trapped sorrow. Rowan shouted above the storm, Elara, step away from it. But the whispers had grown louder, many now, a chorus, murmuring from the frame, from the walls, from the soaked air itself. Elara's heart raced. Her voice was barely her own. She's showing me what they did. The vision came in flashes, a candlelit corridor, servants dragging a struggling woman in a white gown. A man in a dark coat, face half hidden in shadow, a muffled sound of breathing. Then, the wet hiss of mortar, sealing a narrow tomb. Each image struck like a pulse of lightning, and then the scene dissolved back into the present. Elara gasped on the cold floor. She's been waiting for someone who would see her truth, Elara whispered. Someone who could carry her memory out of these walls. Rowan knelt beside her. Then help her, but on your own terms. The idea came as if planted by the storm itself. Elara rose, trembling and resolute. We burn it. Rowan's eyes widened. The portrait? She's bound to it, but if it's destroyed properly, maybe she can be free. Together, they carried it down the winding staircase, through halls lined with the silent faces of ancestors who seemed to lean closer, as if witnessing history rewrite itself. The fire in the hearth had nearly died, but when Elara set the portrait before it, the flames surged higher, gold and crimson. Lady Isolde's face shimmered, eyes flickering between despair and release. Elara whispered a final promise. You are remembered now, not as madness, as truth. The flames consumed the paint first, then the wood, and as the storm outside broke into thunder, a single gust of air swept through the manor, clearing the heaviness that had lingered for centuries. When it was over, the portrait was ash, and for the first time, Renfield Hall was quiet. And so, another tale drifts to its gentle end. But the magic never fades. Subscribe to Magic Fairy Tales TV, where every night, another dream begins. Until next time.